Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Big, huge, mega show today on the podcast. Episode 270 is a triple feature. Megasode. It's true. Triple feature this week on the show. First up, we're covering Joker, Folie, Deux. Very excited to talk about what has been a divisive sequel to 2019's Joker from director Todd Phillips. Also, we're going to talk about The Wild Robot. Andy caught this last week. I caught it this week. This is the new Dreamworks animated feature from director Chris Sanders. You would know him best from How to Train Your Dragon and Disney's Lilo and Stitch. Very excited to talk about Wild Robot. Stick around. It's a sleeper, I think. I think it might be a banger. One more thing. We're also going to talk about Salem's Lot, the Max film that just came out from director Gary Dauberman, I believe is his name. Very excited to talk about this Stephen King adaptation. I have never seen the original. I don't know if Andy's seen the original. So this is a fresh eyes, fresh look. We're getting to this one at the end of the show. Stick around for our Salem's Lot review. We got trailers to talk about. A lot of trailers to talk about in our trailer park segment in the middle of the show. Before we get to all of it, we got to start the news at the top of the episode. First things first, Andy, Scream 7 has a release date. Ooh boy, the Spyglass movie franchise has returned with Neve Campbell leading the charge, it seems, but maybe not Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega from the last couple films. What is this about?
Well, finally, the very troubled Scream 7 production finally has the release date, which is February 27th, 2026. So a little over a year away, about a year and a quarter. This has, of course, been very troubled. It's lost its stars in Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega, who are super hot right now in young Hollywood. Neve Campbell was famously not in Scream 6 and is coming back for this. I feel like the franchise has kind of moved on without her, so I don't really know if that's going to make a big difference. And also, Melissa Barrera was essentially fired for her support of Palestine. And so there's a lot of people who are just going to sit this out. I think. I don't know if fans will still be into this, but it's got a release date. We'll see if it keeps it.
Yeah, it's weird. They're returning with director Williamson. What is his name?
Kevin Williamson.
Kevin Williamson, yes, who penned the script for the first film as well as Scream 2 and Scream 4. So it's a big return to form for the franchise, but it's worth remembering that I think its biggest successes as of late have come from Scream 5 and Scream 6, which were directed by filmmaking trio Radio Silence. They are not doing these anymore. We're going back. That's what we're doing. And Maybe that's a secure bet for Spyglass. Considering how off the rails this has all gotten between social media and whatnot, Melissa Barrera decrying the series, probably a good thing to return to form. But I don't know if it's the best thing for the series, and I don't know if fans are going to be super into that. But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe they'll cook up some rad script and we'll get on with something good. Otherwise, it may just be like a Scream 4 scenario, right? It just kind of comes out and does okay. I don't know. Any interest in Scream 7, Andy? What do you think?
I think a lot of fans are kind of turned off by the direction. Neve Campbell not being in the previous film and then finally coming back for this. She wasn't really in Scream 5 either. She did show up to the very end, and yeah, you've lost your two new hot young stars, and Jenna Ortega has been becoming a household name or big successes in Beetlejuice that just came out, the Wednesday show. She's kind of an it girl, and it's you've just lost hot young talent, a rising talent rather, and it's I think they're going to pay in the end.
Yeah, I do too. Keep it here for more on Scream. We will probably end up watching that film on the show. We covered Scream 5 and Scream 6. You can check out our old reviews. For now, we're going to get to another film that's coming out, Magazine Dreams. Yeah, that Jonathan Majors bodybuilding movie that kind of got canned when, the whole thing happened with Jonathan Majors. Well, now it's got a theatrical release coming from Apprentice outfit Briarcliff. They're putting this together. Andy, what do you know about Magazine Dreams?
So Magazine Dreams was supposed to be Jonathan Majors' big kind of awards film last year. We were actually talking about this last night, ironically. 2023 was a rising and then disastrous year for Jonathan Majors. He had Ant-Man 3 in January, February. Then he had Creed 3 a month later. And then all this stuff hit the fan with these accusations, the domestic violence. He was then dropped from all this stuff. And last year, Magazine Dreams was this bodybuilding drama that had screened at several film festivals. There was lots of buzz. Maybe there was Oscar talk for Jonathan Majors already. And then he was found guilty on several assault charges. Disney, who owns Searchlight, pulled the film, and they've just been sitting on it. And it's finally been sold to Briarcliff, who is kind of the distributor who distributes the films no one else wants to distribute. Like I said, they're also doing the Donald Trump biopic, The Apprentice, which stars Sebastian Stan. So maybe they're the guys you go to when no one else will distribute your film.
Yeah, it does not seem great, obviously, in light of his conviction of assault and harassment stemming from his partner, Grace Jabari. But I do think like the idea for the film, at least before all of that, sounded great. Andy and I hyped it up on the show. We were like, hey, this Magazine Dreams movie with Jonathan Majors, this might be the one that puts him on the map. Disney seemed invested in it for him and Kang. We really like this idea of this power dynamic between this like big hulking bodybuilder who has to try to like have social relationships and be a real person outside of like the gym, outside of like, you know, his dreams of being a magazine star. I don't know. We'll see, I guess, when it comes out. We couldn't tell you. I mean, I couldn't tell you how this is going to be received. I'd imagine people on Twitter probably aren't going to like it very much, right?
It's one of those. It's a difficult place because it's like this is definitely a movie I want to see. I was very interested in it, but I also don't want to support someone like Jonathan Majors who has been accused of like assault and things, but also it gets into a larger conversation of like, you know, when do you give people a second chance? When, like, how can people kind of come back from something like this? So we'll see. I would like to see it at some point.
Yeah, me too. But one thing's for sure, when it comes to like fan input, there's certain studios who care more about what fans think than others. Just take it from Disney. This story from Variety got a lot of attention this week. Toxic fandom, how Hollywood is battling fans who are just out for blood, from social media boot camps to super fan focus groups. Yeah, it sounds a whole lot like Disney's putting together groups of fans to test their films with. How is this different than like a test audience, Andy? Like what kind of input are these people getting?
This story's been talked about all week. Very controversial. They're thinking about putting together groups of like focus groups of quote unquote super fans, mostly to make sure they're not making anyone angry with their kind of story choices. But this seems like they're really just kind of catering to bullies and the loudest people. And a lot of what like the collage here on this article by Variety just has women and minorities on it, and that's what seems to be upsetting these toxic fandoms more than like it's not story choices. It is interesting because it calls back to The Last Jedi being the film that really created divisive film, divided fandoms, and where all this super toxicity came from. And now Hollywood's terrified of it, and their only strategy is don't poke the bear. Like, well, let's not let's not upset them. If we don't upset them, then it's fine. And it's like, that's how you make a real weak storytelling, and you just need to ignore these people, or just find different ways to deal with them. But it's to the point where when they have, like someone like a Daisy Ridley signs on for a film, they put them through like a social media boot camp and give them people to be like, okay, this is how you handle things. This is how you don't. This is how you protect yourself online. And it's like, we shouldn't have to do that. Like, what other film or film genre has to protect their stars from like these terrible fandoms? Like none. And it's just, you're catering to the worst people.
Yeah. Most of this, at least Variety producing this article, comes from Acolyte star Amanda Stenberg making an 8.5-minute video on Instagram after Lucasfilm decided abruptly not to pick up season 2 of Disney's The Acolyte on Disney+. In the video, she says a lot of things. One of the things that's important here is, quote, "Since the series was announced in 2020, we started experiencing a rampage of, I would say, hyper-conservative bigotry and vitriol, prejudice, hatred, and hateful language towards us." She didn't comment on the story anymore with Variety, but she did go on to say that, like, Disney should probably, do something. Like, it just seems like a lot of Star Wars actors and actresses kind of get hung out to dry, and Disney very meekly does nothing. Like, they jump on the praise, right? When Rotten Tomatoes gives something a good review, that's going in the trailer. But when people are spewing hate speech at your new stars, like, you have nothing to offer. You won't get in there and defend them or champion them or decry these people. And Andy's kind of right. Like, as a business, you only stand to lose if you get into that fight. But the fact is, you're putting other people into that place for you. You're leaving these stars out to burn, like in a social media sphere that is not kind to them for wholly unjust and immature reasons that anybody with half a brain can understand. But like, unfortunately, I think they need to do something more. And I think it's fair to say that, I don't know, they need to do something more, I guess.
Yeah, actually, it was either today or yesterday. Jodie Turner-Smith, who's also a star in The Acolyte, called out Disney, saying yes, they need to be more supportive of their stars in these, like when they're the victims of all this like online hate speech and review bombing and things like that. And yeah, I mean, Disney's just sitting back, be like, well, we don't want to upset the fan base, and it's just like you really got to move past that, like
right.
And what I was thinking about again, The Last Jedi, very divisive. Still incredibly successful, billion-dollar film, $1.3 billion. Like in it, you would beg, Disney would beg for a hit like that from the Star Wars franchise. But also, they had such a knee-jerk reaction to that film that they went back to, oh, we just got to please the audience in Rise of Skywalker, and you made an even worse movie that made even less money. So that's what happens when you just knee-jerk react to fan service and what you think the fans want or what the fans think they want.
Definitely room to grow on this one. Their Variety did point out in 2022, after Obi-Wan Kenobi actor Moses Ingram denounced a bunch of racist messages that were sent to her about her role in the show. Lucasfilm posted a statement to its Star Wars social media accounts that read, in part, quote, "There are more than 20 million sentient species in Star Wars galaxy. Don't choose to be a racist." The Star Wars accounts, the official accounts, also shared a video of Obi-Wan star Ewan McGregor calling out the abuse, saying it's not okay. If you're sending people bullying messages, you're no Star Wars fan in my mind. So there has been a mild effort to at least share the sentiment that this stuff isn't okay. But it's 2024, right? That's 2 years ago. Like it's going to continue being a problem until the adults step in and do something about it. So regarding stepping in and doing something about it, we got a lot of news to get to, and this story is probably the most important one, but I want to cover a couple more before we get to Joker. Regarding DC Universe, Lanterns on Max finds its Jon Stewart with Aaron Pierre. Big W for Aaron, I think, but I'm not the comic book fan on this show. Andy is. Andy, what do you know about this?
So Aaron Pierre, who we just saw in Rebel Ridge a couple of weeks ago on Netflix, has been selected to be the Green Lantern Jon Stewart, who's going to be one of 3 Green Lanterns in the show, along with Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan. And so the Green Lantern Corps are like a kind of intergalactic police force, and Hal Jordan is kind of the OG Green Lantern. So he's going to be kind of the older mentor, and then you have these kind of young hotshots in Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner. So I think that's a great setup for a show, and it'll be a good introduction to the characters to bring them in into the larger DC universe. So I think that's an exciting pick, and it's great to see our man who was so good in Rebel Ridge get a big role like this.
Yeah, really, when I read this, I read this as a signal towards like the quality of Rebel Ridge, right? Like that just seemed like a Netflix movie just like any other till it comes out. Then you realize it's Jeremy Saulnier picture who did Green Room. This kid, Aaron Pierre, is in the middle of it, and he's fantastic in the whole thing. The last time we saw him was his, Mid-Sized Sedan and Old, the M. Night Shyamalan film. That was his character's name, Mid-Sized Sedan. He didn't actually play a sedan, but it was cool that there were some immediate rumblings after that weekend that like, hey, DC's still looking for that Jon Stewart character. Like he might be the guy. He's got the jawline. He's got the green eyes, for God's sake. Like it just seems like a layup. Like how is he not the guy? It was apparently come down to him and Stephen James, Stefan James, who's on the festival circuit with Drama the Piano Lesson and starred in the 2016 Jesse Owens biopic Race. They were the 2 big ones. Kyle Chandler is announced as Hal Jordan. I know James Gunn's excited about it on the DC side. He tweeted that he was stoked. We have our Jon Stewart. Could lead into some lofty film opportunities as far as we know. And until then, I know Aaron Pierre is starring as the voice of Mufasa, Disney's Mufasa, this holiday season. He's going to be Mufasa in that movie. So there you go. Everything's coming up Aaron Pierre.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting comic book news. We'll see how well DC blends film and TV. Marvel has kind of struggled with it outside of WandaVision to really get people to care about both mediums, and it starts to feel like homework. So we'll see if DC can do a better job on that front.
Yeah. One place DC's struggling, though, and our last story before we get to Joker. Joker Folie is not doing great at the box office, and it might have an even worse cinema score. You may have heard of this already, but we want to talk about it just before we get into the proper review. Just get it out of the way. Andy, what the hell is going on with Joker?
So I want to remind people that the first Joker made over $1 billion on a $50 to $70 million budget. So very kind of mid-size level film. So huge success. Joker 2 on kind of poor word of mouth has come in at 37.8 million domestically. It has done better overseas at about 80 million, 121 million globally. That's not terrible, but this one cost over twice as much as the first one. Reported $190 million budget. People are calling it a flop. I don't think it's completely a flop because it is doing well overseas, but it's definitely it's weird how you compare it. To compare to the first one, it's bombing, but if you just compare it on its own, it's doing okay. So, but yeah, it's rough. And apparently Warner Brothers is shocked completely by this reception. And I'm like, we'll get into it a little bit later, but they really shouldn't be.
Yeah, Warner Brothers insiders say there's no way to sugarcoat the results, and the studio is stunned and sorely disappointed. At the same time, they believe Todd Phillips is a creative genius and worthy of gambling on, which appears to be very true. It seems like, on paper, from what we can tell, Warner Brothers genuinely either didn't read the script or just thought it didn't work, but figured, you know what? He made a bunch of money before. It's the guy who made The Hangover, and that turned into 3 films. Let's just let him do it. Todd Phillips didn't want a lot to do with James Gunn's kind of DC direction. He kind of did this on his own, and it seems to have not worked. A gamble that has not paid off. The culprit behind this unfortunate turn of events appears to be word of mouth. People are not recommending this like they recommended the first one. Quite the opposite, actually. They're encouraging people not to go and saying it is a waste of time. Terrible feedback on a movie that, frankly, like I don't think deserves a D cinema score. For God's sake, Madam Web got a C+. Like, I know it's not as bad as Madam Web, but to each their own, I guess.
There's definitely a certain bandwagoning effect that's happening. I mean, I've seen worse movies in the last month. I mean, we watched Horizon, an American Saga on this show, which was painful. We'll see. This could have some legs internationally. It might do okay, but it does have to make almost 500 million to break even. So it's a steep ask, but also, Warner Brothers let Todd Phillips do what he wanted to do. He took no notes. He didn't chat with James Gunn and the new DC kind of overlords at all. He was just allowed to do his own thing. And it's like, well, you can't really be upset or surprised at the results when that's kind of, you gave the man carte blanche and he gave you a really creative film that's been real divisive. So in the other news, Beetlejuice continues to be very successful, crossing the 400 million mark this weekend, holding at number 1, The Wild Robot, which has made over 100 million, which we're going to talk about more a little bit later in the show, coming in second, and Transformers in third. So the holdovers are doing pretty well.
Man, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, but Wild Robot just stomped all over Paramount's Transformers 1. Good Lord. Like, Transformers got creamed, and Wild Robot comes out, a week or two later, and just handily takes it. Crazy. Like, you would think Transformers would do so much better, but man, they just could not. It's like they marketed it to little kids, and most of the adult audience just assumed, this one's not for me, and just avoided it. It's crazy. Like, they gotta do a better job next time you put out a Transformers feature. But with that, there's probably no better segue from Transformers into talking about Joker, or at least Todd Phillips' direction, because I think Andy's right. It's certainly creative. It's something, by God. My man made a movie, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. And Andy's going to be taking the summary. So without further ado, Andy, please take it away.
Without further ado, indeed. Joker Folie Fall is the long-awaited follow-up to 2019's Joker, directed by Todd Phillips. That film, again, made over $1 billion, starred Joaquin Phoenix and won 2 Oscars, was nominated for many more, won Best Actor for Joaquin Phoenix, and Best Original Score by Hildur Gudnadottir, who returns to this film as well. So we find Arthur Fleck in the sequel, a couple of years after the events of the first film, where he has murdered 5 people, and he is in Arkham Asylum and is being put on trial for these murders. Arthur's not having a good time. He's Arkham Asylum is a bit like a Shawshank prison. It's real rough. He's beaten. He's bullied. Lots of police brutality in this movie, kind of surprisingly. He's not doing great, but his life has changed when he meets Lee, otherwise known as Harley Quinn, played by Lady Gaga, of course. Big role for her. They meet. They fall in love. She's obsessed with him, but she wants him to be Joker, wants him to really bring out that side of his persona, not Arthur. And she encourages him, and he starts, this trial. The trial starts going kind of better, and he eventually dons that persona. That you've seen the footage of the makeup in the courtroom. That's kind of our main setup. And then we also have a number of musical numbers that happen throughout the film, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Todd Phillips says this is not a musical, though there are musical numbers, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But it's been very controversial. Sorry, I'm losing my place. It's been very controversial and divisive. Zach, what did you think?
So we got tickets to see Joker in 70mm IMAX, which I'm excited to talk about, the format. There's one of 11 70mm prints in the world. We saw it second run through. Second time light went through film, we were watching Joker, which is really cool. Like, it's a great way to see it. But in the lead up to seeing it Thursday night, we'd started to see early reviews because Warner Brothers did not show this movie to anybody outside of Venice Film Festival. No test screenings. Nobody watched it. Reportedly, Todd Phillips was like in a cabin in the woods. He was on a ranch somewhere with no internet when this came out. And we started to see reviews, and we started to see the Rotten score come out, and it just kept dropping throughout the day. And I was like, oh no, oh boy, what's happening here? But we try to be objective on this show. We want to make sure we're going into everything with an open mind. And I thought there's going to be some things that are going to work for this movie just right off the bat. We're probably going to have another banger score. The first film had an incredible soundtrack, like incredible work, fantastic. Looking forward to it. B, performances. Joaquin Phoenix is pretty much always a hit. Lady Gaga is probably going to work real hard at it. I think it's going to be a good time. C, the format. The visuals are going to be fantastic. Cinematographer Lawrence Sher is returning from the first film to do this one. Also shot The Hangover with Todd Phillips, Small World. And it's going to look great, right? Like light punching through darkness. It's going to be big shadows, makeup. It's going to be cool. And I could say that all of those things are in Joker, Folie à Deux. Like, they're all here. All of those things work. But the things that don't work are wildly damning. And for a long feature and a follow-up to something I think people were really excited about, it ends up feeling pretty disappointing. And I'm looking forward to talking about why. We don't do spoilers on this show. We won't be spoiling the film for you. But let's kind of talk about, the shape of it, I think, and what doesn't work here.
Right. So one thing that I've heard about the movies is that enjoying cinema is all about managing expectations. And so I want to get into plot and what kind of movie this is and is not. There's a lot of people who are disappointed because it is not a Marvel movie. It's not, full of action and jokes and that kind of thing. It's another character study, but it's very different from the first film where we saw Arthur kind of devolve into this character of the Joker. This movie's about kind of the failures of the legal system in prison. It's more of a prison drama / legal drama. Like I said, it reminds me a lot of like the Shawshank Redemption, which is a pretty brutal movie in large parts of it. It's more, Todd Phillips is interested in that. He's interested in this idea of spectacle. I was reminded of Jordan Peele's Nope, which is also about people's obsession with spectacle and kind of what they'll throw away to see that. And it's a little bit what happens here. Lady Gaga's character, Lee, is obsessed with Arthur, not because she loves Arthur, but she loves Joker and she loves that persona. And this is what Todd Phillips is interested in kind of navigating and exploring. He's not here to give you the Joker, which is what I keep saying, like the clown prince of crime. He's doing a different kind of character study that kind of condemns fans of the first film. We saw a guy in our screening who was like in full Joker makeup and costume. And it's like, it's not the kind of movie you dress up to. It'd be like if you dressed up as the Joker to see the Shawshank Redemption or Schindler's List. It's like, no, not going to dress up for that. So it's a completely different kind of film, tonally, plot wise, and all. Go ahead, Zach.
No, I feel like its biggest criticism that I've heard from people is that it is a courtroom drama, which, like, I would love to say it's not that, because it's a musical and you don't even get into the courtroom for a little while. Like almost the whole first act of the film is happening like exclusively inside Arkham and inside this kind of hospital. But ultimately, like, it ends up being a review of the previous film. Like it is a courtroom drama covering the events of the last movie and analyzing them. Like, and for a sequel, that's a weird choice. And I've been struggling to think of other movies that do this. Like when the second film in a series is strictly reviewing and reanalyzing the events of the first film. I thought of like Back to the Future 2, but that's much more dynamic and much more kinetic than Joker 2. One of the things Joker 2 has going for it is its subtitle, Folie, Deux, which is a shared psychosis or shared delusional disorder. When this got announced, it got announced right alongside Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. Big kerfuffle about her and Margot Robbie having the role, but ultimately everybody kind of figured that's what that was hinting towards, right? We're hinting towards Harley and Joker, but really it's more about this alternate identity of Joker versus Arthur Fleck, who is Joaquin Phoenix, right? Who's our character in the first film. And in the first film, Arthur Fleck ends up kind of becoming this Joker persona, becoming this Joker role. And this movie, from its opening shot, this is kind of goofy animated sequence, kind of sets up the idea that these are two separate things. These are two separate identities. And our characters are basically disputing whether or not Arthur Fleck is one and the same, whether he is Joker and he is responsible for these crimes, or if they're kind of two alternate things and Arthur's really just crazy and he's a good guy deep down, right? And like that's not where anybody wanted this franchise to go. Like that's not where anybody thought Joker 2 needs to be, right? Like I think people wanted the Clown Prince of Crime, and Joker Folie Deux is like very unsatisfyingly not giving it to you.
That was my complaint of the first film. I remember when I first saw it that, you know, it takes him the whole movie to become the Joker. He doesn't do any, you know, criming or scheming. And so I was like, oh, well, surely that will happen in the sequel. And then it doesn't. And Todd Phillips purposely, he was allowed to do what he wanted to do. And I'm a little bit warmer on this. I think it's really interesting. But if I were an exec and I read the script, I would say, I was like, I like this. This is brilliant. No, people are going to hate this. So there's a little bit of that going on where it's just, there's a disconnect between the audience. Cause like I said, if I would have read the script, I would have said, there's no way the audience goes for this. It's just a different kind of movie. And it's almost condemning. It reminds me of Matrix 4 a little bit in that it's kind of condemning its audience and condemning the people obsessed with it. It's a little bit of commentary on like people that are obsessed with true crime and like serial killers and things like that. And because what Todd Phillips is saying is like, Arthur Fleck is kind of just a loser that had this delusion of grandeur, this persona of the Joker that everyone liked, and that made him feel good. But he's like, no, he's a sick individual. He's a murderer. He's not anyone to be, dressed up as. Which I feel like he hates that people dress up and dance down those stairs, like in the first one. So it's a really different examination of that. Also interesting to say, there's a cartoon short at the beginning that kind of introduces and lays out the entire story in cartoon form. So another interesting touch.
Yeah, I do want to talk about some of the stuff that works. I know I opened at the top with like, here's the things I was expecting. Big visuals, big soundtrack, big performances. All of those I think work. I really do. Like the many of the elements, the building blocks of Joker Folie Deux are good. So it's a little surprising when you step back and look at the full picture, it doesn't really come together the way you'd expect. The movie looks great, especially in the format. If you can see it in IMAX, you should. If you could see it in 70 millimeter, you definitely should. I think there's probably maybe a couple more weeks of screenings left. We'll see, depending on how based on how it's been doing at the box office. I don't actually know if Warner Brothers is going to be running it that much longer, but The way light punches through darkness in this movie is fantastic. Also, I can't remember the last time smoking a cigarette looked as good as it looks in Joker Folie. I do. Oh my God. Everybody in this hospital smokes and it always looks awesome. I don't even smoke and I wanted a cigarette. It looks so delightful as this like slow burn kind of. Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga are both tremendous. Also, you have a pretty good cast of supporting characters. Brendan Gleeson is in the film. Catherine Keener plays Arthur's lawyer. She's a lot of fun. Harry Lottie plays Harvey Dent. I haven't seen him in anything, but I think he's in that show Industry on Max, I think I read. And I know people say he's good stuff over there. Steve Coogan shows up. A few other characters that are a lot of fun that I don't want to spoil. Everybody is good in it. And the music, I think, is good, but the problem is the musical pieces, I think, aren't good. And that leads us into a weird place where Warner Brothers and Todd Phillips have been saying it's not really a musical, but it kind of functionally is. So it's a weird thing to say it isn't when, like, it definitely feels like it's a musical. It's just not a well-made musical. That's the problem. The musical parts are dry and bland and visually uninteresting and usually like a couple of long takes just stuck together in editing with like a medium shot. It's like, that's it? You guys didn't do anything like big and grand? I don't know. What do you think, Andy?
So yeah, the musical numbers are a good thing to get into. So the reason I think Todd Phillips said this isn't a musical is it's not a musical in the sense that people aren't breaking into song and dance within the reality of the movie, and the musical numbers don't advance the plot. Really, what they are kind of a heightened expression of the emotions. When emotions get real big, either like big, like exciting, fun, or sad, that's when we break into song. The very first song that Arthur sings is in the prison, and it's when he finds out he's going to be going to trial and that the trial is going to be televised, and he first sees that people are like excited to see him, and he gets really excited about this moment, and then he breaks into this song in the prison, which is essentially always just happening in his head. He's not like, none of the musical numbers are happening within the realm of the film. They're all kind of imaginary. And so it's meant to express emotion, but it's not necessarily moving the plot forward. So I can see why he would say that it's not a musical. Most people would consider this musical still, or at least heavy musical elements. I think they're fine. They're good pieces. They just kind of go on too long most of the time.
Yeah. Also, it's mostly a 60s musical send-up with 60s musical songs. And like, people don't know those anymore. And like, that does create an interesting space for Arthur and Harley to have this like totally one-on-one connection that other people don't understand. And they're both a little crazy. So obviously it'd be a kooky connection, right? So like, it's a unique and niche thing that they are both into this specific kind of music, but general audiences aren't, dude. Like, most people are checked out. And like, when you put that with a couple of numbers that are emotional but visually flat and shot in a gray Arkham Asylum with dark walls where nothing is really happening in the background, people get up and go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like, that's when you're getting a popcorn refill in a 2 hour and 18-minute picture. Like, it just ends up feeling long, which doesn't help because those are supposed to be your moments that are kind of emotional. And then it's weird for the director to back away from that and be like, well, it's not really that kind of picture, and back away from all of it. I mean, it seems like from what we can tell, Todd Phillips knew that what he was making was uniquely divisive. Like, he knew that people were not going to love it. And ultimately, like Andy mentioned, it seems like he's kind of roasting the audience of the first movie, which is a weird choice because you have something that like dudes are getting dressed up in Joker gear to come see, and then to have them sit there and watch a movie where like you're just telling them you're a
loser if you
dude, like guy, like boy, geez. Like it's a choice. My man's an auteur. He's making his own kind of movie, that's for sure.
Yeah. So the musical sequences, what I want to say, because I listened to some interviews, they did the Les Miserables thing where they recorded live on set to allow the actors to act more through the songs, like, and they're interested in the emotion, not like having perfect notes, perfect like voices. And what they did is they would do the takes and they would improvise, like no two takes were the same, and then when they got kind of what was best, then they had to write the entire musical arrangement around it, which is really challenging. And like Arthur Fleck, he's not a great singer. He doesn't sound very good a lot of time, but that's kind of the point. He's real rough around the edges, and that's very challenging to do as a vocalist, to like purposely not sing well and to sing like harsh. There's a point where the Joker sings a very sad song, and kind of he gets more sad as it goes on, and his voice starts to crack and break as like tears are starting to come up. And that's very impressive from like a technical point. So I was interested from a music perspective, kind of how they put this together. And, I think there are some good ideas. And again, it's supposed to be emotion. That's why they were more interested in picking like songs that match the emotions they wanted, and not so much as just like, well, what's going to please the audiences. I didn't mind the musical sequences as much, but a lot of people were like, oh, I didn't even know this was a musical. Why is this in here? And that's not helping it either.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be classic Hollywood marketing if they just kind of didn't tell people it's a musical till they show up, and then half the audience is surprised when somebody breaks into song. But I do want to say before I wrap things up, because I feel like I'm starting to talk in circles, I do think there are some emotional high points in this movie. There are a couple of those courtroom scenes that hit real good, and it's worth mentioning that like the first movie is dour. Like if you don't remember Joker 1 was 5 years ago now, 2019. Like Arthur Fleck's life is not good, dude. It's bad. And like, it doesn't get better over the course of the movie. Like nobody cares about him. Nobody wants him. So when he finds somebody who truly does in Harley Quinn, it's very meaningful, right? Like it means a lot. But that first film is a tragedy, and this second film is a response to that tragedy. And that brings with it like a couple of reprises of moments that were like really challenging in that first movie and are really heartfelt and are like really turned out. Again, Phoenix and Gaga do a great job here. They're not the only ones. There's other people that are in here that I think are a treat to see when they arrive in the film that are really, really tremendous, like doing really good work. And like that comes out, that shows. But I think it just feels bloated. I think it feels like too much. I think it reads like an epilogue to the first movie that probably could have been a little tighter than a 2.5 hour feature, 2 hour, 18-minute feature. But I don't know. I mean, obviously it's getting divided in the cinema score. I think it's got like a 33 on Rotten Tomatoes or something, which means like a third of people liked it. A third thought it was pretty good, but the other 2/3 figured it was a pass. Any other thoughts on this one before recommendations, Andy?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Joker, Folie, Deux?
So this is, I feel like my recommendations are getting more and more complicated. I think if you're interested in it, and again, manage expectations, know what you're getting into. It's a prison drama. It's a courtroom drama. It's part musical. It's not a Marvel film. It's not, he's not going to become the crown prince of crime. It's a meditation on the failures of the legal system and the prison system. If any of that interests you, I would say check it out. I think it is really well made. We saw it in 70 millimeter, and some of it looked incredible. Seeing Lady Gaga in 70 millimeter was really astonishing. So I think technically it's real made. If you're on the fence, maybe save it for streaming so you can watch it a few months from now and see. And if all that sounds awful, then I would say soft pass. So kind of complicated this week.
Yeah, it's a complicated movie. And I think time might be nicer to it. It's one of those movies that I think a couple of years down the line, people will look back and be like, it's unique and it's different. And that's good because in the genre, especially comic book movies, we need more of that. And like Todd Phillips is definitely doing something different and unique here. But I just don't think it's I don't think it's wanted right now. I don't think people want what this movie is bringing to the table. I think it satisfies everybody involved. I think the characters end in a good place. But man, like audiences just seem to be walking out and saying this was dud. This doesn't work for me. So unrelatable soundtrack, some bland visuals, a long runtime. Like I think you end up with a movie that people just don't really love that much. And that's a shame, especially considering how much it cost and that Warner Brothers doesn't seem to be turning out a profit on it. Hopefully things will turn around soon. With that, we should move into our next segment. Andy, I'm going to be taking the first movie in this, but what do we call this segment?
The Trailer Park?
So the first movie we're talking about in the trailer park this week is Baby Girl. We got this trailer just a couple of weeks ago. We put it on hold till we could talk about it this week. Film stars Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson and is scheduled to come out this holiday season. Here's the byline. A high-powered CEO puts her career and family on the line when she begins a torrid affair with her much younger intern. Ooh, and we have a trailer full of sleazy lines and sexy moments and sharp looks between Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson. And I'm going to be honest, if it wasn't Harris Dickinson, I don't know if it'd work. But my man did Triangle of Sadness, and he's so good at playing this like high level, high fashion, stone cold, no emotion kind of character that he plays that a bit in here against Nicole Kidman's kind of CEO who's just longing for something more. And it seems to work perfect. The power dynamic actually kind of appears to work here. Andy, what do you think of the trailer for Baby Girl?
I think this looks pretty exciting. This was written and directed by Helena Ryan, who did Bodies, Bodies, Bodies a couple of years ago. Up and coming female director that I'm excited to. And so this is her next project. I think this looks like a lot of fun, and it's definitely exploring like these power dynamics. It's kind of a BDSM relationship. Nicole Kidman's character, again, this big powerful CEO. She has a big family that she's, the mother of. She's married to Antonio Banderas' character, and she's like submitting to this person who's an intern. So it's a real interesting. I think it could be a very interesting look at that and the kind of the wants and needs of powerful and non-powerful people. It's coming out on Christmas Day, which is fun. There's so many movies coming out on Christmas, so this is kind of it's counter programming for sure.
Yeah,
don't take the family.
This might be one we end up catching in January on like a catch-up episode because there's no way we can watch everything that's coming out this holiday season. What's next, Andy?
Juror number 2, directed by Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood back in the saddle. He's had a couple of misses, but this actually looks pretty interesting. So Juror number 2 stars Nicholas Hoult, who we see in the trailer. He's driving on a road and he hits something. He thinks he hits a deer or an animal, something like that. He gets out, has some damage to his car, but doesn't see anything. Gets back in, goes on his way. It is eventually called to jury duty for a murder trial of a man who's accused of killing his wife, who's kind of not gone missing, but that murder happens on the same night as his accident, and he thinks he might actually be responsible for it, but he doesn't know completely. But now he's on the jury, and so this guy who may or may not have committed the crime is he's the jury for. And that's kind of the setup. We don't get a lot of that. We get a lot of vibes. This also stars Zoe Deutsch, J.K. Simmons, Leslie Bibb, Toni Collette, and Kiefer Sutherland. So great cast, and this looks pretty exciting. And I haven't been excited for Eastwood in quite some time.
Yeah, I've heard some conflicting reports on Juror number 2. On the one hand, I've been hearing that Eastwood is getting older, right? And I'm hearing that this movie is maybe lacking in a little bit of pizzazz and a little bit of punch that you would expect from his previous work. But also, I love Nicholas Hoult. He's rock solid in everything he does. And also, I was hearing that Eastwood's sets are apparently really chill. I hear he only shoots half days. My man only shoots in the mornings and then takes lunch and he's off for the afternoon. Which makes for a pretty laid back set. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think Holt would be working with him if he wasn't turning out a good script. I think there's something here. I think Juror number 2 might be a hit. And my man has turned him out before, so we'll see. But for now, I don't know. Keep an eye on Juror number 2. Our next trailer is Better Man. This is that Robbie Williams biopic, the musician in the UK. But it's a live action biopic, but Robbie Williams is played by a CGI monkey, like a CGI ape, like Planet of the Apes, right? It is, as far as we can tell, a full run-up of his life from being born in the UK as everybody else. Again, everybody else is normal, but he is a CGI monkey in the movie. And then growing up, going to school, right? Getting into music, getting into bigger music, getting on stage, becoming a thing, becoming an icon. And it's directed by Michael Gracie, who I think is going to be the secret sauce to make this work for those of us in the US, because if you're anything like me, you may be thinking, who the hell is Robbie Williams?
Yeah.
And good news.
I know one song.
We don't know either. Yeah, I don't know who he is. Andy's heard one song from him. And the funny thing is, since this trailer dropped, people in the UK have been on Twitter like, what do you mean you don't know who Robbie Williams is? Everybody over there knows who he is. I don't know who he is. The thing is, visually, this trailer looks really good because Gracie shot Greatest Showman, and Greatest Showman was small budget, but big ideas. And the same thing appears to be happening in this trailer. Like, my man works in music production, big VFX. This seems to be maybe the perfect thread to get a music biopic that's got a clever creative hook out and into theaters that people want to see. I don't know if Robbie Williams will be big enough draw in the U.S. to draw big numbers, but we'll see. I think another trailer comes out. We'll get somewhere. Andy, what do you think of the trailer for Better Man?
I'm not too into this, only because, again, who is Robbie Williams? And I feel like we're running out of ways to do music biopics, and we're like running out of ideas because we got this kind of silly idea. We have the Pharrell Williams Lego
piece by piece.
Music biopic. Yeah, piece by piece.
Piece by piece.
Why didn't they just call it like Lego?
Dude, they might as well just call it the Pharrell Lego movie. Like, honestly.
Yeah. And it seems like we're kind of running out of ways to kind of do these, and we're getting real desperate now. So I don't know. I would definitely not watch this day one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see. We might end up covering it. Might be a streamer. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to do when it comes out. What's next, Andy?
Companion. So this is a new horror movie that comes out in January. January, a great time for horror. This is directed and written by Drew Hancock, who's done a lot of TV writing. Very kind of enigmatic film. We get this kind of romance vibe initially. There's candles, roses on the table, a couple sitting down for wine. It's Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher, and then we realize Sophie Thatcher is handcuffed to the chair she's in, and something really kind of strange is going on. After that, we get this montage of a bunch of kind of highlight movie stuff. We get a big vault full of money, people brandishing weapons, fist fights, blood splatters. We don't really know what's going on at all or why it's called Companion, but we know something's not quite right. The trailer finishes with Sophie Thatcher putting her hand over a candle and letting it catch fire and not doing anything, but seemingly kind of frozen. Very intense scene. I don't know what this is about at all, but I'm kind of into it.
Yeah, Companion looks like a far left field kind of picture because, yeah, we don't know anything about it. It doesn't seem like it has a big budget, and the trailer doesn't necessarily put together a tone that's representative of the film. It's just kind of a montage of things that happen in it, cut in a tone that works for the trailer that's exciting. But as far as the actual movie goes, I don't know. It's got a lot of cursive font. Reminds me of the trailer for like The Menu, which turned out to be a banger, but was very refined, like was very particular. So I think a follow-up, a full trailer for Companion would be welcome. The teaser trailer's got me interested. You're whetting my appetite. I want to know more. One more trailer to talk about this week from the music biopic scene. We're going to talk about the full trailer for A Complete Unknown. And if you're thinking, what's A Complete Unknown? It's the Bob Dylan biopic. That's the name. That's what it is. It's A Complete Unknown,
just gone with Bob.
Dude, I'm telling you, the names on these things are getting bad. Yeah, like what happened to Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man, right? Like just make it something people know, but it's fine. A Complete Unknown is a lyric from a Bob Dylan track, of course. And more importantly, it is the Bob Dylan biopic starring Timothée Chalamet in 1965 when young Bob Dylan shakes up the music scene by going electric and becoming the voice of a generation and defining 20th century music. We recently saw Chalamet singing in Wonka, and he was great. Holds it down great, and I didn't even know the kid had pipes, but he can do it. And it seems like he's mocking up Dylan pretty well in this picture. Also stars Elle Fanning, Edward Norton. Seems like it's going to be a hit. I am not a big Bob Dylan fan, but as far as I know, Bob Dylan fans will turn out for it, right? I don't know. What do you think, Andy?
This trailer definitely looks a little bit more interesting. Chalamet definitely, he's doing the Bob Dylan voice both in singing but also just in talking. He's nailed it down really pretty well. I mean, there's Oscar talk already for him, and again, we see Edward Norton as Pete Seeger, Boyd Holbrook as Johnny Cash. Like, so it's kind of a who's who of 60s musicians. This is looking good to me. Again, also comes out on Christmas. So. Yeah, I mean, so much stuff. I think this looks good. I'm excited for it. Again, rumor has it he's going to get another Oscar nomination for this, so we'll see if that happens.
Two more films to talk about on this action-packed episode of Off Script, so stick with us. We need to get into our next feature. I'm going to be taking the summary on this one, so please excuse any clumsy delivery. The movie is The Wild Robot. So, The Wild Robot is the story of Roz, a intelligent robot that is shipwrecked on an island and completely stranded on her own. Their own, except for all of the animals on the island, right? A full teeming space of wildlife. This is a northern island, right? Big rocks, big waves, not Caribbean, not southern. It's cold, it's harsh, and the animals there are unfeeling and mean. They all have personalities, but Roz doesn't understand any of them, of course. She's a robot that's there to help, and help with any task you need. We don't know where she comes from, but she's there. The movie opens with her just kind of shipwrecked or crashed into some rocks. She meets some otters. They're kind of mean to her. She wanders into the forest. She meets a fox. That's kind of mean to her. She meets some birds. That's mean to her too. All these animals that are living and thriving in their own ecosystem want nothing to do with this monster robot until Roz meets a young gosling, a runt of the litter, right? A young goose who otherwise may not have made it out there on their own, and realizes that it's her task, it's her job to take care of this gosling, to raise them to a goose, to make sure they can eat and they can swim and they can fly south for the winter with the rest of the geese. It becomes Roz's task. And over the course of the film, we learn who Roz is, who this young gosling is, where Roz came from, and ultimately, like, if man or animal and beast or robot can become one. I do not do a great job of summarizing The Wild Robot, but I can tell you that it is a Chris Sanders picture, which is exciting because if you know Chris Sanders, he is the creator of Disney's Lilo and Stitch. He's the creator of Dreamworks' How to Train Your Dragon. He's got some big titles under his belt, all right? And he doesn't direct he only directs every so often. It's usually every 3 or 5 years. This is his new feature. It was executive produced with Dean DeBlois, who also produced How to Train Your Dragon, co-directed, I think, with Chris Sanders on that film. And now here we are. We have a visually striking feature based on a book, and I'm excited to talk about it. Andy, what'd you think of The Wild Robot?
So I was hearing a lot of buzz about this in the kind of festival circuit. It had premiered last month at a couple of them. Heard some takes, some interviews where people were really blown away by that, like in tears, in a good way, really loving the film. And I saw it a week before Zach did, and I really loved it as well. And I was really kind of blown away. The art style's incredible. The story construction is very mature. It's this idea of like, we have to work together. We have to go kind of against a lot of our instincts and nature in order to survive. And this is told, of course, with cute animals and things, but it's a larger message to kind of humanity. And I was like, I really didn't expect, a kid's film to go that deep. But very good. Not a dry eye in the house. Really excellent.
Yeah, I think the best place to start talking about Wild Robot is probably in its cast. I missed them in this summary, so here it is. Lupita Nyong'o is the voice of Roz. Pedro Pascal is Fink the fox. Kit Connor is our young gosling, or really adult gosling, Bright Bill, as he gets older over the course of the film. Bill Nye is also in the picture. Matt Berry, Stephanie Hsu, Ving Rhames, Mark Hamill, Catherine O'Hara. I mean, reads like a great cast list. And I think everybody turned out for Sanders because I think he does really fantastic work. And he seems to be leaving it all on the table here. Wild Robot is a story about survival. There's a surprising amount of death in this movie, which is weird because robots don't really live, right? So it's a funny thing for a robot to kind of learn about the idea of animals having seasons, right? Seasons of change, spring and fall and winter and summer, and geese flying north and south for that. And additionally, like, animals holing up in the winter and making sure they have enough food to stay warm, because if they don't, then they won't make it. And then the animals that work with them, a lot of that's important. And all of that happens on this ecosystem of an island that is untouched by man, right? Like, it is just animals and Roz. And from the very moment we see Roz at the beginning of the film and she's looking at these otters, like, we get this interaction. Otters are curious what she's into. They realize that she's not food and or can't help them. She may be a danger. They immediately see her as a threat. So trying to overcome, like, this relationship with animals, learning their language over time, like trying to say, hey, I'm helpful, I'm here to help you, and all these animals don't want anything to do with her, gives Roz a position of not having purpose, which is a challenge for our protagonist, who is a robot, because her whole thing is to be helpful and to help others and to serve you. That's all Roz wants, is just to be helpful. And it's kind of perfect when she meets this Gosling, Bright Bill, and she realizes that she has a task. Like, I have a purpose now. I'm going to help Bright Bill get from A to B. It's particularly interesting as Bright Bill gets older, and that's where the film really starts to develop, because Bright Bill starts to realize that his mom kind of figure, Roz, is obviously different from everybody else, but that makes him different from everybody else. And he has to struggle because of that. And he realizes that having his relationship with Roz may not be as helpful as if he had just been raised in nature with everybody else. And it's this awkwardness, it's this strangeness that I think produces like an ooey gooey emotional center for Wild Robot. It's for the weird kids, right? It's for the weird ones out there, baby. Here's to the ones who dream. Wild Robot is a film for people who are odd. And I think that's good, because that creates like a good seedbed for emotional storytelling, especially in a vibrant children's film.
I think one of the other surprises is that like this movie is about motherhood of all things, because it's about Roz learning to become a caretaker, a mother figure to the Gosling, and it's about the frustration of that process. There's so many parts where Roz gets frustrated. She's like, he won't listen. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm making it up along the way. And I saw it with a friend who has several kids, and it was like she was telling me about how much it just hit home, because she's like, that's what it's like, that's what it feels like. You don't feel like you don't know what you're doing, like you're not going to succeed. So it's a very poignant level of storytelling. And you're right that Bright Bill, he's like a different species of Gosling, and he's smaller, and he grows up with the robot, so he talks like the robot a lot of times, which, because he'll say something like hello, beep bop boop, and then like go on, like he adopts these kind of weird mannerisms, and then their relationship becomes strained as he grows older, as he enters adolescence and wants to be separate. Like it's really interesting in examining that in a really kind of interesting and loving way. And I remember I listened to several interviews. First of all, Lupita Nyong'o almost ruined her voice on this movie. She had to take a 3-month break because she just kept doing too many takes, and she developed like polyps and things, and had to rest her voice for months so she could recover. But also the director, Chris Sanders, said, in a lot of particularly animated films, you kill off people's mothers all the time, and that's kind of you think Bambi, and that kind of is the event that kicks off like the growth of this character. Like the mother character is killed off and just absent from a lot of these things. You have a lot of times you have single fathers for some reason, and they're like, oh, sorry, your mother died. So they were interested in like, no, we're going to keep the mother around and really focus on that process and that difficulty. And it really nails it. It's really kind of amazing.
I think Wild Robot is a film that's better for adults than it is for kids. I think I should explain what I mean when I say that. When I saw this movie, there were a bunch of kids in the theater with us. Naturally, it's a children's film. We saw it the second weekend it came out. And like, just like when you go see like a big budget, like Fast and Furious or Jurassic World opening weekend, you can see when other people in the theater get bored. Normally it's because when other adults whip their phones out. That's when you're like, oh, that person's bored. That person, like you can just feel it, like when a scene slows down, when the action settles. And with kids, it's even easier. They start to act up, right? Like they're impatient. They don't want to sit there. They got a ton of energy. And this movie keeps it up for the kids for the first third. Great. When Roz arrives on the island, it's beautifully vibrant. Everything is in this movie, I should say. Dreamworks kind of kept on with this kind of watercolor animation look that they embraced for their last movie, Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. I think that was the name of it. That is carried over here, and it looks fantastic. The colors are fantastic. Big saturation, big hues, green, reds, big lighting, I should say. Every time Roz pops on her eyes in the dark, like her eyes shoot out like laser beams, like out into the darkness. Like everything looks fantastic. Everything looks great in this movie. But kids aren't super big on big lighting, right? Like they're not going to care a lot about big colors.
Big
like
themes.
What's the action like? Yes. And this Roz like arrives on the island, meets these animals, all these different furry, fuzzy creatures that all move differently and make different sounds. That's all a lot of fun. They're very slapsticky. Like they can kind of get thrown and tossed around like an animated character would and still be okay. Like that's all very sweet. When it starts to get into its emotional themes, When we start to have long talking scenes, these kids are like, I'm bored. I want to get up and walk around and, jump around. And I see that. And this movie definitely has those. Those are the things that I think the adults are saying, oh man, it was so sweet, brought a tear to my eye. I don't recall any kids crying in The Wild Robot. I think they're mostly bored by those scenes. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing, but worth mentioning. Like, I think it's uniquely a bit more an adult movie than it is a kids movie. And I think that's why it's getting a lot of comparisons to like Pixar features, right? Because Pixar notoriously makes sneaky adult movies that are shaped like kids movies. This movie, I think, chases that same high, and in a good way, in a way that I think it's successful at. I think a lot more adults will remember The Wild Robot at the end of 2024 than maybe kids will. Kids will look for something like Sonic 3, Mufasa
right.
This holiday season. But like, I don't know if it's going to do it for them, I don't know, like Puss in Boots did, right? Like maybe not quite as like slapsticky fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, a bit of an environmental message, because like this movie actually takes place in the future where we fly by San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge is underwater. So it's a place where climate change has drastically changed the world. And that's kind of, its message is about working, like there's the motherhood allegory, but there's also kind of the secondary plot about working together to counteract our instincts. And there's an incredible line in this. Some of the writing's so good, but there's an incredible line where Roz is talking to all the animals, both like predators and prey, saying like, we got to work together to survive. And she says, in order to survive, we must become more than we were programmed to be. And I was like, oh my God, like it's like a Shakespearean line. Some really incredible stuff. Yes, it is very adult in the best ways.
Yeah. And like, I know you already mentioned Lupita Nyong'o's performance, but like, it's worth mentioning the way she starts off so robotic and just slowly starts to eke into like more casual forms of speech is so slight and so well done that there's a point in the film much later where she ends up talking to a much more robotic character that's much like she was at the beginning of the film. And it's like, it's her voicing the opposite character. They both have this Roz voice, but one is this standard Tin Man that she starts off the beginning of the movie with, and the other is this developed kind of voice she's found as Roz has been on this island. It's great, dude. It's one voice actor against themselves, and it sounds so good. Like, she manages to bring this kind of level of inflection to it. Nyong'o's fantastic. Oh my God, she needs more work. I'm glad she's doing okay afterwards. Also, Kit Connor, really great. I know he's on that show, Heartstopper on Netflix. I thought he was Steven Yeun. Start like the whole movie, I was like, that's Steven Yeun from Invincible. I know those cries of charisma anywhere. Nope, completely wrong. It's newcomer Kit Connor, dude. Like, great voice work, very emotional, very grounded, really fantastic. Like to carry in like deep messages and like deeper feelings into The Wild Robot.
Yeah, really excellent. I think I'm ready.
I know. I think I'm ready too. Andy, would you recommend The Wild Robot?
Absolutely. This is probably one of the best things I've seen all year. Probably my favorite animated film of the year. Like Eat Your Heart Out, Inside Out 2. Like this is so much better on so many levels than that movie. Like it's so mature, dealing with really mature and adult themes of motherhood, of working, of community, of working together, of the difficulties of both of those things. Incredible score, incredible visuals, great voice work from our cast, lots of laughs and action. So highly recommend.
Yeah, Wild Robot's a lot of fun. I think we're going to see this again for Best Animated Feature. It's probably going to nom. I don't know if it'll win. I'm thinking of what else has come out this year. But Wild Robot, I think, is a top 5, like easy of the year. It's a lot of fun. It's in theaters now. If you have the ability, go see it. Go catch it on a weekend matinee or something. If you got a kid, maybe a niece or nephew you could take over, take them. Date night movie, like checks the box. Like Wild Robot's a lot of fun. Would recommend. Rock Solid from Chris Sanders, another banger. I don't know if it'll get a sequel from DreamWorks, but if it's anything like his other work, like Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, like almost assuredly this will get some kind of continued property. So like get in now on whatever Wild Robot's doing. Like there's something special here. It's a glimmer of quality, I think, in Wild Robot. And with that, we got one more movie to talk about. Again, jam-packed episode. We're squeezing them in here, all right? We're doing it tight like a clown car. Andy's taking the summary on this last film. Andy, please take it away.
Salem's Lot. So this is based on the Stephen King novel from the 70s. It was his second published novel. This has been made several times, actually. It was made in 1979 as a British miniseries that's about 3 hours long. It was also made in the early 2000s as an American-made miniseries, also 3 hours long, which starred Rob Lowe. And there was a sequel of sorts in the late 80s called Return to Salem's Lot. So story's been done quite a lot, and King has said that this is his favorite of all of his novels, which is kind of incredible. So the story is writer Ben Mears, played by Lewis Pullman, returns to the town of Jerusalem's Lot, just Salem's Lot or the Lot. After growing up there as a boy, he lived there for 9-10 years. His parents were tragically killed in a car accident. He's a successful author. He's has several books and published, and he's returning to learn about his roots, learn about the town, because he was so young and his parents were taken from him that he doesn't really know. And he finds the town just kind of in a different place. You can never go home. You can't go back to the place you grew up. And the town is being infested by vampires. There's a very kind of mysterious figure named Straker who opens up an antique shop, who's clearly evil and has bought the big haunted mansion on the hill, and has brought a vampire of sorts with him. And they, of course, start slowly taking over the whole town. That's our setup. This is, but like I said, this has been done a number of times, and there's some interesting themes at work here. So that's our setup. Zach, what'd you think?
So I tried to go into Salem's Lot with an open mind. I haven't read the book. I haven't seen the original. I was coming at this fresh. I know we get roasted sometimes in comments. People are like, what do you mean you haven't seen the old one? I just want to be honest. I want you to know where I'm coming from when I talk about this thing. I'm coming in fresh, a fresh Max viewer who does not know anything about Salem's Lot. I'd seen the trailer. I was looking forward to it. And I like Lewis Pullman, right? Like as our lead. And I like Bill Camp. I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff recently, but he's a lot of fun, big drama. I loved him in season 3 of The Leftovers. So I was really looking forward to Salem's Lot. Love a good Stephen King adaptation. I think this movie does not super work for me, though. And I think it didn't really work for me because it just gets really, I don't know, fast. It's got a funny issue with pacing where it just kind of, this whole town has to get taken over pretty quick in like an hour 54, and things have to turn sideways for our characters and they have to figure out what to do next. And I didn't know where the story was going, but I know King books are traditionally pretty long, and I think maybe this movie suffers from being edited too tight. I was reading over the weekend that there was originally like a 3-hour cut, and I think that would have worked maybe better. It's got so much to do. It has so much to do. There's so many things that have to happen efficiently for Salem's Lot to work start to finish. Like, watching this, I get why the old movie was like 3 hours long. Like, it's a big story, and I think they try to do a lot in a short timeline.
Yeah, it moves really, really quickly. I'm trying to. Yeah, it's the book is almost 700 pages, so it's a long book. Yeah, and it just kind of rushes because we get to know Ben like day one, and then immediately people are getting attacked and turned into vampires, and people have to prove to other people that vampires are real, and it's turning the town, and it all has to go very quickly, and people have to be convinced very quickly that it's happening. So it's a little unconvincing. Also, it's not very scary. Like the scares are just kind of weak. They're, and I don't think it's really concerned with being that, but there's a lot of vampire imagery, stakes, crosses, a lot of glowing crosses, garlic, all that, some blood splatters, but it's not super creepy like his stuff can be.
Yeah, like it feels a little movie of the week. And for being a Max original, like that's kind of where it's supposed to be, right? Like it's not a theatrical joint. Like you're supposed to kind of watch this at home and take your time, but it felt like it had loftier aspirations watching it. Director Gary Dauberman previously directed Annabelle Comes Home, movie I have not seen, but is a bit smaller in scope, right? Like you got a cursed object movie, you got the haunted doll, and you got some characters around that. And that's kind of your movie. Like, I get it. A little smaller. This is a whole damn town. And it's a 1970s town, by the way. Very Stephen King. We're up in, like, Maine. Very windswept. It's fall. Looks great. But Andy's right. Like, not only do you have to have something awful come in, start to take over the town, you got to have a group of survivors. You got to have people convinced. You got to have people who aren't convinced. Like, and all of this, you have to keep the audience in the whole way through. One of the biggest critiques I've seen of this is, it should have been a series. You should have done this longer. And I felt that watching it. I was like, you should have done like 6 episodes of this. Like 6 45-minute episodes or something. Like pace it out a little bit. People have compared it to Midnight Mass over on Netflix, the Mike Flanagan show. Would recommend, by the way, for October. I've been rewatching myself. Tons of fun, Midnight Mass. And Salem's Lot is like a tighter, more efficient version of that. But it also like feels a little bit too much like other media I've seen outside of just Midnight Mass. Like we were just talking about the Nosferatu trailer coming up. We went and saw Bram Stoker's Dracula not long ago. Like just the bones of this. I'm like, man, I've seen this story before. Like I know this already. It doesn't feel like it's doing anything new. And the problem is, Salem's Lot was doing something pretty new at the time. Like it was bringing something new in a different way to American audiences, but now it feels like a retread. And like, I think the It films, which this film was produced by one of the producers of the It movies, the thing that does differently is it brings this kind of new, almost like Stranger Things feeling that Stranger Things introduced over Netflix, Kids on Bikes, to Stephen King's work. And this, in the hands of Gary Dauberman, like doesn't quite have the time to get there. And I think that the longer cut of it, like a more paced version of it, would. You get longer time to sit with scares. You get better jumps, better orchestra stings, better shadows in the darkness moving around just in the back. Like Salem's Lot just has so much to do.
Yeah, there's also just a lot of characters. There is like the writer Ben Mears, he has a love interest named Susan. There's the town doctor, the town priest, the town teacher, the town principal, like the town sheriff, and there's a ton of characters, and they don't really get a whole lot of time. So I can see a longer, like a series or a longer film, getting to kind of explore these different people a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like I do think what's here is not bad. I just wish it'd been a little bit stretched, a little stretched out, a little bit more suspense, a little bit more scares, a little bit more higher highs. The lows are just dry where our town is figuring things out. And like, that's worth mentioning with the pace, like you don't get a lot of downtime in Salem's Lot. Like things move pretty efficiently. We're moving along through Salem's Lot. Like it's short, it's tight for a reason. And I think that's probably a benefit for viewers who are looking for something like a little snappier, but I think it's worth investing the time into something a little bit larger. Like I think Salem's Lot is good for whetting your appetite for something a little bit bigger, like Midnight Mass over on Netflix, or maybe that Nosferatu coming out in December. That's gonna be a lot of fun. But I think I don't know. I think it suffers from being this kind of movie of the week format. I think it could have been a little bit loftier.
Yeah, I mean, it is straight to streaming. It's available on Max, as is the old 1979 Salem's Lot. So, and that one is, again, it's a 3-hour miniseries. So that is available to check out. I got to see if anyone's got the 2004 with starring Rob Lowe as Ben Mears.
Yeah.
Do you know what this is about? Do you know why Stephen King wrote the story and kind of what it's kind of an allegory for?
No. I mean, feels like Dracula, but that feels like the dumb answer. Yeah, like what do you got?
No, it's not clear. And I only know this because I looked it up. So there's a couple of things. Part of it was, I think Stephen King grew up in a small town, and he has a penchant, soft spot for that kind of nostalgia and the way small towns used to be. And so at this point, small towns, and even today, were largely disappearing. The kind of folksy, everyone knows everyone kind of places. But also, this was written in a time when there was a lot of government corruption during the Nixon era, the Watergate, all these things, and it just felt there was that all of government was corrupt, or felt that way. And that's part of what this story is about, because kind of a lot of people get turned into vampires, and the story is a little bleak, it's a little hopeless. It's but kind of about the death of a town, and like I said, it's paralleling kind of how King felt at the time about government.
Yeah. Okay. I do kind of see that. One of the things that's been really interesting putting together, just like promotional material for the show and putting this together, is whether or not like Salem's Lot has a couple of apostrophes in the title. Like the official title for this does not, but all of the posters and promotional images do, because the full name of the town is Jerusalem's Lot. So the title Salem's Lot is like a shortened version of that, and therefore would have a couple of apostrophes on it. So I think we will for our content, but your mileage may vary. If you're Googling it, it'll come up fine either way, unless you're looking for the 2004 Rob Lowe version, apparently, which may be difficult to find. I don't know what the deal is with that. But any other thoughts for recommendations?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Salem's Lot?
It's available on streaming. I think that's the perfect place for it. If you're a horror head and you're looking for something to watch this Halloween season, it's definitely, I think, worth putting on. It's a little, to me, it felt long and also too fast at the same time. It moves a little bit too quick. It's not super scary, but I think it is well made for a streaming film. And I wish it could have been more. A series is probably better, but not too bad.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I think if you're looking for something kind of soft, a little bit October, just kind of get you in the zone, and you can throw it on while you're doing laundry or something, like toss on Salem's Lot. It's not bad. It's not bad, but it's paced funny. I don't know. There's something odd to it. It feels like it happened in editing. I don't know if HBO watched it and they're like, make this go faster. Who knows? Maybe the people who should have been watching Joker 2 over at Warner Brothers were like, let's check out this Salem's Lot work print. Let's see what's going on over here. We should get our eyes on this and not watch Joker. I don't know, but I think it's good work. I'd be curious to see what Gary Dauberman does next, because I think this is definitely an evolution of what he did with Annabelle. It's larger in scope, but it suffers under like the weight of the plot of the 700 pages that it's supposed to be, that has become an hour 54. And like now I get why that old one was 3 hours long. Not bad. I feel like I'd still not bad. Not that's how I feel about Salem's Lot. There you go. Also, maybe go check out Midnight Mass. It's fine if I haven't plugged that movie enough. Andy, before we get to the end of the show, I totally forgot to tell you, next Tuesday I'm tied up. So we should either do the next episode on Monday or Wednesday, and we can decide that later. We don't have to figure out that out now for folks. We will be back next week. What are we going to be watching?
So we're spoiled for choices. A lot of things coming out. Saturday night, the SNL kind of day one, I almost said biopic. That movie, the SNL movie, comes out this Friday, as well as Terrifier 3 and The Apprentice. So those are a lot of what's coming out. I'll have to also look at streaming, because we will probably pick something from there as well. Lots to see, lots to come out. We'll be in touch about what comes out. And we also have later in the month, We Live in a Time and Venom: The Last Dance. Yes. Part of the reason this was such a big episode today, doing a triple feature, is because I'm going to be going out of town in a couple weeks. Figure I should let you guys know early. I'm going to be taking a much needed vacation on the 22nd and 29th with my cool wife, Chris. We're going to head up to the Northeast. We got a car. We're going to drive around, maybe swing into Canada for some poutine. It's going to be great. And I'll probably definitely catch a couple movies while I'm out there. But in the meantime, we're going to be back next week, and then a little bit of hiatus, and then we'll be back. We'll work it out. So, don't panic. More off script to come. If you want to see what we've been doing, though, what we've had going on since, if you were just returning to the show, maybe missed last week, good news. You can catch all our old content over on YouTube. Big things going up on YouTube, man. We got individual reviews coming out. People are subscribing. Go join the fun over there. We're on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok even. You can find us around there. You can follow, comment, subscribe, like, share. All the social media buzzwords. All the things you can do there with us, Script Film Review. You can share us with your friends. We'd really appreciate it. Our audio listeners, of course, are very near and dear to us. We are available on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, iHeartMedia, Amazon Music. I think you can find off-script episodes. And of course, you can subscribe there as well. You can find our website, offscriptfilmreview.com, where we're posting interviews, additional content, side work, other things we got going on. You can check us out over there. And of course, you can email the show directly.
Direct correspondence from you to us, your mouth to our ears, or your fingers to our eyes, through the power of email at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. Tell us what you think of the show. Tell us what you thought of Salem's Lot. Maybe share something we should watch. Recommend. Love hot recommend, especially for October. You got any horror movies that are worth watching? God, I just watched Child's Play 2 for the first time last night, which I thought would be better than it was because there were subsequent Child's Play movies, and I had no idea that movie is as wacky as it is. Anyway, that's enough on movies. We've been talking about them for over an hour. From all of us at Offscript, the home of Bolt Cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.